Giratina VSTAR is out, and it is one of the most hyped decks coming into the Lost Origin era of the Pokemon trading card game. And at this point in time, there are two major archetypes in which Giratina VSTAR is built. And I wanted to talk about my experience playing with both and talk about which one's better, or even if Giratina is good at all. I'm Jet from inthirdperson.com. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's talk about the two flavors of Giratina and which one is better. And we'll start with the Lost Zone engine. And I think for context, let's set this up. Giratina VSTAR has 280 HP, no weakness, has the amazing move Lost Impact for 280 damage, and you put 2 energy attached to the Lost Zone. So it's kind of hard to string together back to back. However, you also have the Lost Zone with the Comfey, and you got Mirage Gates to help accelerate. You've got Colress to help accelerate and draw cards. And along the way, you're unlocking new moves. Once you get 4 cards into the Lost Zone, you can use Cramorant to get in some chip damage. Once you get 7 cards, you can use Greninja with the Mirage Gate and do some snipe damage. You can charge up Snorlax. In my version of the deck, I have Snorlax to attack that hits for 180. You've also got, once you get to 10, you unlock Sablei's ability to drop 12 damage counters any way you like, and you also get access to Star Requiem for 1 Grass and 1 Psychic. You just erase a Pokemon off the board, and you can just take a VMAX from full health to nothing out of the game. Absolutely insane damage power here, or damage output from this card. And look, you may disagree with some of the particulars on my list. You might be like, we don't need Leafeon, or why do you have 2 Cramorants in your deck? You only need 1. Why do you even have Snorlax in the deck? I'm talking about the archetype as a whole here, right? I think it's up to you how you tweak this, but the general framework is Giratina, Comfey, versus the Arceus version of the deck. And let me pull that up here, and it's gonna look something like this, where you've got Arceus as your attacker, primary attacker. It's the engine of your whole thing. You're gonna charge Giratina up with a whole bunch of energy and then smash. So some of the benefits of Arceus: it's really easy to get 3 energy onto Giratina to attack. And the big thing about Giratina's move is that Lost Impact is put 2 energy attached to your Pokemon in the Lost Zone. This is really important because you don't have to take the energy off of Giratina. You can put Giratina in the active, hit for 280 damage, and then take the double turbo off of Arceus. Boom. You hit for 280, you still have all your energy to attack for 280 again. If you happen to get another double turbo, you can attach it to Arceus, discard that again on Lost Impact, and just hit for 280 again. You lose access to Star Requiem, but do you need Star Requiem if you can just smash for 280 over and over again? You throw a Choice Belt on here, it's 310. You get the Zigzagoon in there, and you're one-shotting most VMAXs in the game as well. So those are the two sort of archetypes for Giratina, and let's talk about some of the pros and the cons of each one, and then I'll tell you where I land on this argument. And my feelings on this have changed in the last week, and I will say this, like, playing this Giratina Lost Zone box sort of deck has been a real struggle for me. There are a lot of scenarios where you don't necessarily have the Comfey or the outs to the Comfey or the ability to charge up the Lost Zone fast enough to really make this deck go. By the end of at some point in your second turn, you should have Mirage Gate ready to go to unlock all of your stuff. And sometimes that just doesn't happen. And when it doesn't happen, you can be in a really bad spot. However, once you get rolling, I kind of loved having all of the different attackers that were available to me. Cramorant was really great at either taking out single prize Pokemon like a Sobble or a Drizzile or anything like that against the Rocks deck. This was amazing. Um, you having the Sableye for spread damage, that ended up helping us out on today's stream. We took out a Shadow Rider VMAX with this. Snorlax, I can't remember if we actually used them, but this is good to take out, like up trade with a Crobat or a Lumineon. But like you can kind of see, you kind of have tools for everything here. Giratina can take out the V-Stars and VMAXs, and then this suite of single prize attackers can not only uptrade against V and V-Stars, but also just single prize decks and keep pace with those, which are super popular on the ladder right now. If you're the type of player like me and you haven't played in an IRL tournament, and that's not necessarily your grind, and you are looking to play on the ladder where single prize decks are super hot right now, this variation of the deck holds up a lot better, because you're playing with a lot more single prize targets and you have more options available to you. So the trade is you kind of have options for everything. Any type of matchup, you're up against big Vs and V Maxes, this deck can do it. If you're up against single prize decks, this can do it. However, it can be a struggle bus to get set up in a way that allows you to get access all your tools. Meanwhile, you can play the Arceus version, and Arceus Giratina gets you almost instant access to Giratina's Lost Impact, and you use that move over and over again. And I think that once you run the numbers between the Bibarel and Arceus's star power, this version is probably more consistent at being able to get set up and attack. If you don't need Giratina for whatever reason, you can fight with just Arceus and then use Sharon's Care, which helps you stay in the game longer against single prize decks. And if you're playing in a meta that leans heavily towards V-Star and V-Max Pokemon, being able to hit for 280 consistently, throw a Choice Belt on there, throw in a Zigzagoon, being able to consistently KO V and V-Max Pokemon might be enough. It might be enough, and this might be better for you. However, this deck is going to struggle a bit more against a single prize meta because of all the 2 prize targets in here. Yes, Arceus and Giratina can kind of tank multiple hits in scenarios where they can't one-hit KO you, and you do get access to Sharon's Care. You can play as many of these as you want to kind of stall for time a little more, but I don't necessarily think it holds up as well against a single prize meta that's kind of popular right now in PTCGO. Up until pretty much the end of this stream, I was going to say that overall, the Arceus Giratina version was just the all-around better deck. And coming off of this stream where we pretty much smashed with the other deck the whole time and kind of had answers for almost everything and were able to get our Lost Zone going, I still think this is a very strong deck. This might be one of the best decks in the game. In a tournament setting, this might be the way to go over the Lost Zone version. But for the purposes of playing on PTCGO right now, this might actually not be the way. I think this is a little more of a liability against single prize decks. I still think it's very strong. If you only have a 2/2 Giratina line and you already have the Arceuses, I think this is a fantastic deck to run. But overall, I can't believe I'm saying this considering how much I was trashing this deck in private up until this point. And I think you heard me talk about, like, leading up to today's stream, like, I was nervous about this stream and this deck doing bad. I think that the Lost Zone box version, however you configure it, has a higher ceiling and ultimately might win out as the better of the two. Having the options to deal with pretty much everything is kind of awesome, and it more or less worked out for us on today's stream. We won a ton of games, and the only games we really lost weren't necessarily because we got outplayed. It's just we kind of bricked. But do you want to risk your how much do you want to risk on trying to get Comfey out and discarding a whole bunch of cards into the lost zone? I don't know. I think if I had to choose right now which of these two is better, I can't believe I'm saying this. I think the Lost Zone version is better by a little bit. And I think if you are looking to play this deck on PTCGO, I actually kind of would go another. That's a different conversation. I think overall, I think the Lost Zone version is better. If you are playing against a V-specific meta, like in a tournament, you might want to go with the Arceus version instead. If you're playing on PTCGO and you're like, oh, the Giratina is too expensive right now. One, I think the prices are coming down. I think that the world is cooling off on Giratina a bit, just as I'm starting to get more excited about it. But also, I think the Lost Zone versions of this deck that fight with mostly Cramorant and then have a Radiant Charizard in it are also amazing decks, and they might actually be better suited to playing specifically on PTCGO right now. So this is kind of like the all-around one, but if you're trying to min-max your experience on PTCGO, you might want to go with the Lost Zone Charizard one instead. And I wish I had that deck built out. I could just flash it here, but I don't, unfortunately. But basically, imagine this deck, take out the Giratinas, put in more Cramorants and a Radiant Charizard, and it looks something like that. So that's where I stand on the discussion on Giratina, the Arceus version versus the Lost Zone version. Which one's better? I think today I've finally been converted and think that the Lost Zone version is the way to go by a little bit. I think there's also the discussion of like, is either of these versions better than the top tier decks right now? Is it better than Palkia? Is it better than Mew? Is it better than Arceus and Teleon? I don't know. I don't know. I do have my concerns that I think the Arceus version might have a better chance against the top decks in the format right now, but I don't know if either of those is just flat out better than a Palkia or flat out better than a Mew. It's probably somewhere in the ballpark, but if you're like, I need the absolute best deck in the world, I'm not sure if either of these Giratina archetypes is it. So I think that's kind of where I stand on this discussion at the time of this recording. Of course, there are tournaments happening as I'm recording this right now that may completely show us the light on how amazing Giratina is and show us the new way to play and prove that it's definitively top tier or prove that it's definitively bad, whatever the case is. But that's just how I'm feeling about it right this moment. Let me know in the comments or let me know in the chat, what do you think about Giratina VSTAR? Is it cracked? Is it busted? Is it scuffed? Let me know. And for the purposes of the video, thank you everybody for watching. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.